Good morning, www.andrewmarkmusic.com. And this is part 5 of my Winter Solstice series, The Golden Rule, Winter Solstice, December 2018. It's the day that the sun in the northern hemisphere begins its journey back across the sky. At Easter, it will reach its halfway mark, the equinox, and by June 21st, it will reach its height in the northern hemisphere and return back again and over and over and over. I'm going to preface today's post with what I consider to be extraordinarily important documentary called Secrets in Plain Sight by Scott Ostad. I believe it proves beyond any reasonable doubt that astronomy, archaeology, and mathematics were extraordinarily advanced in antiquity, beyond anything modern academies are willing to concede. I will say that, in my opinion, the documentary proves nothing about God per se. But somebody had incredible knowledge about, geography, knowing to where the pyramid is the center of the Earth's geography, knowing that Winnipeg, Manitoba is the center of geography in North America, all the alignments between Washington, D.C. and Stonehenge. I mean, there's just no way the official stories can account for this, because these are supposed to be Stone Age, Bronze Age, archaic people who just couldn't have known how to go about doing this, how to line up perfectly these monuments all around the world. And then you have astronomical knowledge that it's impossible for the official stories that people should have been able to know the size of the sun, the distance of the sun, down to minuscule details, to things we barely even know about recently in the last 50 years. So do watch that documentary. I also believe that it proves that the Kabbalists control civilization. They branched out of the Middle East into Europe. Paris is ISIS, right? And Washington, D.C. in America is all controlled by the Kabbalists. I think this documentary proves that. It's basically a form of Luciferianism. If you understand the myths, Lucifer made an agreement, or he told Adam and Eve that he was going to make them gods, I hate to use he, it was going to make them, through gnosis, it was going to make them gods. And I believe a big part of what's going on in the world today is the Luciferians trying to implement that promise made, and they're going to do it through merging human consciousness with artificial intelligence, and Lucifer will have succeeded in what was said in the Garden of Eden. The literal metaphysical reality of these, someone called Lucifer, who knows? Yeah, I've said for a long, long time that Satan, who is, in my opinion, isn't Lucifer. If people believe in Satan, then Satan exists. Maybe not metaphysically, but if people are going to implement satanic ideas, then it exists. In a way, it's real. Anyway, I'm going to get into in future videos about who I think held this knowledge. And as a Gnostic, a non-Capillarian Gnostic, I believe that it's 70 archons created by the Demiurge who control this matrix. They know the fine details of everything about this place and everything about what humans are. The Elohim archons created us to be slaves. We're inherently flawed. The matrix that they created is inherently flawed. That's my personal religious spiritual hypothesis on who had this knowledge. I'll get into various arguments to back up that hypothesis, but for now I shall get on to part 5 of the Golden Rule. By now you could be sensing a problem. If higher dimensions of existence are real, or at the very least, if more advanced evolutionary beings exist in this 4D universe, and they exist via voluntary associations, then why are we practicing and normalizing things like unnecessary exploitation and coercion, which go against our long-term best interests? This conditioning has effectively made us prisoners. We'll get into who the wardens are as we move along in this series. I just touched on that. In my last post, I touched on the desert, Mideast, Northern Hemisphere solar origins of Judaism, and I'll briefly touch on the solar aspect of Christianity here. I should mention first, though, that the literal historicity of these myths is dubious at best and non-existent at worst. What's a fact, though, is that the warring tribes within Judaism by the 1st century AD had every reason to replace a physical temple with a symbolic one. And I've linked a Richard Carrier expose on that, and it's something that, as a Gnostic, I agree with. And this appears to be exactly what happened. The Judaic solar tradition simply got renewed into the form of Christendom, as did Islam, which would succeed in formalizing a totalizing theocratic method of control, which had its roots in Babylon, and we'll touch on that in the next post. The main point is that the state control of religious experience, which began in Babylon, continued within the Roman Empire, and the solar and lunar aspects of these religions are unmistakable. The rest of this series will explore the reasons why having an economic system premised on unnecessary exploitation and coercion, almost always maintained by force and violence, was and always will be a bad idea. In fact, a very bad idea. So that's the end of part 5 of this winter solstice series. It's www.andrewmarkmusic.com. Peace out.
Up this morning, I look down the tracks. There ain't no train coming.